The mass murder of children in Texas is another horrific tragedy that is very familiar to us in America. And we have now kind of this public pattern for these atrocities, anger, grief, and calls for action by many. And we watch as our elected leaders come back up and use the same words every time.
Hillary and I are profoundly shocked and saddened by the tragedy today in Littleton, in Southern California, by the news of the shootings at Virginia Tech,
Roseburg, Oregon. It's an elementary school in Newton,
Texas, Parkland, Florida,
Michigan. The prayers of the American people are with you.
We are praying for them.
Laura and I and many across our nation,
our entire nation, with one heavy heart, is praying for the victims
and their families.
Plenty of politics in life is scripted, but when the script is this easy, familiar, when it melts into a kind of Baroque set of talking points for the murder of children, that is one among many signs that we are getting something wrong. And those are just the ones that, as I've said to you, because I try to be very straightforward, are considered, in the grim math, big enough body counts. If you widen out to the stuff that doesn't make the national news, over the past 5 years, there have been over 100 school shootings with a fatality. This year, we've had 27 school shootings. I'll admit to you, as a newscaster, most of them don't make the nightly news on most of the newscasts. And then when there is one that is quote-unquote big enough, we go into the cycle. A kind of a grim and gruesome ritual that we in the press do acknowledge. President Obama referred to this dynamic all the way back after a mass shooting in 2013.
It ought to obsess us. It ought to lead to some sort of transformation. Yet here in the United States, after the round-of-clock coverage on cable news, after the heartbreaking interviews with families, after all the speeches and all the punditry and all the commentary, nothing happens.
That sound you hear is the sound of nothing happening, at least as best as we can tell, right now, the day after. So maybe it ought to obsess us a bit more. How do we, not only in our policy and leadership in politics, which we've just discussed tonight earlier in the program, how do we, in our society and our discourse as human beings living together, which is what we are in a common society, how do we change this? And I get it when people say to me, I watched some of it, I read some of it, I saw the alert on my phone, and then I had to look away. I get it. But when is it negligent to allow this process to become so normalized that we check a box and then look away? And is there another way to change this ritual and discourse that kicks in after these mass murder tragedies? We brought in someone to think about this with us. Michael Hirschorn is an Emmy-award-winning TV producer, a magazine writer, and also a progressive activist. Thanks for being here. Your thoughts?
I wonder if this is a moment for less emotion and more cynicism. I mean, I went back and I looked at how Democrats responded to this 20, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and it was much more strategic. It was really about how do we gain power so that we can put in place the policies that we want to put in place. Mm-hmm. Right now, from you and me to Chuck Schumer, we're responding emotionally and not strategically. Right now, we don't have the power to change things, and no amount of begging on the Senate floor, like Chris Murphy did, and it really moved me, is going to change anything. We have to get more senators, more congressmen in power, and then we can change the laws. In order to get more senators and more congressmen in power, we have to think much more politically. And one of my problems with the Democrats in general is that they've lost that ability to think politically and think strategically.
Just to be clear, you're speaking as a progressive who supports
Correct.
Gun safety measures, and your problem with the Democrats is that sometimes you think the public message to concerned parents and others is what?
Is emotive, tragic. We're sort of codependent with the Republicans in the way that, we say things need to change, they have to change. but we know they're not going to change, and yet we keep saying they need to change and have to change, but we don't step back and say, what do we need to do in order to force things to change?
And Michael, I wouldn't wish being codependent with Ted Cruz on anyone.
You got it.
Would you? No.
Not at all.
So when you and I, when you connected with us about this today, you pointed to an example where gun safety was a political pitch, but not an emotive wail. And it's a kind of an old school Clinton ad, which folks can watch because Michael provided this example, that goes to banning certain bullets that are, by the way, bullets are dangerous to everybody, but it was specifically put in the context of protecting cops from those bullets. Let's take a look.
My job as president is to take care of the American people. And I have done my best to take good care of this country. We are safer, we are more secure, we are more prosperous. But in the end, what we stand for, the values we embrace and the things we fight for will shape the future.
Yeah, so Clinton in his re-election campaign ran on banning cop killer bullets. He enlisted the support of police departments, police unions, in order to push for gun safety in the context of protecting law enforcement. Now, that would require a level of message control that I'm not seeing right now, right? You could also say for January 6th, that was an attack on cops. So if we were smart politically, we would be looking for ways to create wedge issues that put Republicans on the defensive and allow us to win politically.
That makes sense. Briefly, The Onion, which is a satirical site, has been actually rerunning this headline after every big shooting. This is just the screen grab, but what it says, I want to read out loud, is, quote, "No way to prevent this, says only nation where this regularly happens." The conservatives are out in Hungary and other places touting a different model of government. In 20 seconds, is there also a way to tell parents, to your point about clarity, we know this can work, we can protect your children?
Absolutely, and I think the Democrats have a golden opportunity now with abortion and with gun safety to be the party of law and order and the party of freedom. It's a chance to flip the script 180 degrees.
It's an interesting perspective, and you bring a different background than, and I don't want to offend you, but it's not like you've worked on 7 failed Democratic campaigns, which is sometimes what pundits draw on. But you are a communicator, which is why we come to you sometimes, and I appreciate your perspective on a very grave topic. Michael Hirschorn, thank you.
Thank you.